Rain poured down on Boston's historical streets as Skylar Thorne raced up the elaborate stone steps of the Blackwood mansion, her resume clutched tightly beneath her coat. She was 20 minutes late for the interview, a fact that made her stomach churn with anxiety. This babysitting position wasn't just another job. It represented her last hope to stay enrolled in medical school. "I'm so sorry," she gasped as the massive oak door swung open, revealing an older woman with steely gray hair pulled into a severe bun. "The bus broke down, and then I couldn't find a taxi that would." "Mr. Blackwood despises tardiness," the woman interrupted, her voice as cold as the marble foyer she led Skylar through. "I'm Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper. Remove your wet shoes." Skylar quickly slipped off her rain-soaked flats, painfully aware of the small hole in one of her socks. The grandeur of the entrance hall made her feel impossibly small. Crystal chandeliers hung from 20-foot ceilings, and original artwork lined walls that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. "Wait here," Mrs. Winters instructed, leaving Skylar dripping on the imported rug. Alone for a moment, Skylar straightened her blouse and attempted to smooth her unruly auburn hair. The rumors about Declan Blackwood swirled in her mind. Tech genius, ruthless businessman, suspected of involvement in his wife's death 5 years ago. The society pages had been merciless, painting him as either victim or villain depending on the publication's mood. "Miss Thorne," the deep voice startled her. She whirled around to face a man standing in the doorway, tall and imposing in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was streaked with premature silver at the temples, and his eyes, a piercing steel blue, regarded her with cool assessment. At 39, Declan Blackwood carried himself with the weight of someone far older. "Mr. Blackwood, I apologize for my tardiness. I'm not interested in excuses," he cut in, gesturing toward an adjoining room. "Your credentials are impressive. Pre-med at Johns Hopkins, top of your class. Why would someone on track to become a surgeon want to babysit?" The question was delivered with such skepticism that Skylar felt her cheeks burn. "Medical school is expensive. My scholarship only covers tuition, not living expenses." The study they entered was lined with leather-bound books and dominated by a mahogany desk. Declan did not invite her to sit. "My daughter is not easy," he said bluntly. "The last 4 nannies quit within 3 months. Willow has difficulties connecting with people since her mother's death." Skylar nodded. "I understand grief. I lost my parents in a car accident when I was 12. Something flickered across his face, a momentary crack in his composure. "Daddy," a small voice interrupted them. A little girl stood in the doorway, partially hidden behind the frame. Even from a distance, Skylar could see the resemblance to Declan, the same striking blue eyes, though the child's were wide with uncertainty rather than narrowed with suspicion. "Willow," Declan said, his tone softening slightly. "This is Miss Thorne. She's interviewing for the position of your new caretaker." The girl regarded Skylar with unusual intensity for a 7-year-old. She clutched a worn stuffed rabbit against her chest, its ear threadbare from constant handling. "Hi, Willow," Skylar said, crouching down to the child's level rather than talking down to her. "That's a very special rabbit you have there. Does he have a name?" After a long silence, Willow whispered, "Stella." Declan corrected quietly. "The rabbit is female." Skylar acknowledged with a small smile. "That's a beautiful name. Like the stars." Willow's expression brightened almost imperceptibly. "You know about stars?" "I do. I actually have a small telescope in my apartment. I like to look at the constellations on clear nights." "Orion is my favorite," Willow said, her voice gaining strength. "Mine too. Especially his belt, those 3 perfect stars in a row." Declan watched this exchange with unconcealed surprise. Willow hadn't spoken this much to a stranger in years. "Miss Thorne," he interrupted, "perhaps you'd like to spend a few minutes with Willow while I review your references?" Skylar recognized the test. "I'd love to." As they left the study, a striking woman appeared at the top of the grand staircase. She descended with practiced grace, her designer heels clicking against the marble. "Declan, darling," she called, her voice honey-sweet, yet somehow brittle. "I thought I heard voices." "Persephone," Declan acknowledged without warmth. "This is Miss Thorne, interviewing for the nanny position." The woman's perfectly painted lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Another one? We do seem to go through them quickly." She extended a manicured hand to Skylar. "Persephone Blackwood, Declan's sister-in-law. I've been helping raise little Willow since my poor sister's tragic accident." The way she emphasized accident made Skylar's skin crawl. "Nice to meet you," Skylar replied, noticing how Willow shrank against her father's leg at Persephone's approach. "Come along, Willow," Skylar said gently. "Maybe you could show me your favorite books?" To everyone's surprise, Willow reached out and took Skylar's hand. As they walked toward the grand staircase, Skylar felt Persephone's icy stare boring into her back. An hour later, Skylar descended the stairs to find Declan waiting in the foyer. His expression was unreadable. "You start Monday," he said abruptly. "Mrs. Winters will email you the details of your compensation package and living arrangements." Living arrangements? Skylar hadn't expected to live in. "It's non-negotiable," he stated. "Willow needs consistency. The East Wing guest suite will be yours." Before she could respond, the sound of Willow's laughter echoed from upstairs, a sound so unexpected that Declan looked up in astonishment. "7 a.m. sharp, Miss Thorne," he said, turning away to hide whatever emotion had briefly crossed his face. "Don't be late." The first week at Blackwood Manor taught Skylar more about silence than all her years of study. The mansion was a labyrinth of unspoken rules and weighted glances. By Friday morning, she had mapped the emotional topography of the household. Mrs. Winters ruled the domestic staff with military precision, but softened around Willow. Declan remained a ghost in his own home, appearing only briefly at breakfast before vanishing into his office or to his company headquarters downtown. And Persephone drifted through the halls like a beautiful viper, her words dripping with honey-coated venom. "You've done wonders with Willow's hair," Persephone remarked as Skylar finished braiding the child's dark locks for school. "Such a maternal touch. Did you have siblings to practice on?" "No, I was an only child," Skylar replied, helping Willow gather her books. "Oh, and your parents? What do they think of you playing house with a family like ours instead of focusing on medical school?" The question was a perfectly aimed dart. "My parents passed away when I was young." "How tragic," Persephone murmured, her eyes revealing no sympathy. "You and Willow have that in common then. No wonder she's attached herself to you." Willow's small hand slipped into Skylar's. "We're going to be late for school." As they walked toward the waiting town car, Skylar felt the weight of Persephone's stare. The woman's presence in the household made little sense. Why would a sister-in-law remain so enmeshed in her late sister's family? Especially when tension crackled between her and Declan like static electricity. After dropping Willow at her prestigious private school, Skylar returned to explore parts of the mansion she hadn't yet seen. Her medical textbooks lay forgotten in her suite. Today's anatomy quiz would have to wait. Something about this house demanded investigation. The third-floor east corridor was rarely used, according to Mrs. Winters. Skylar's footsteps echoed against the hardwood as she passed closed door after closed door. At the end of the hall stood a single door. Unlike the others, this one had a modern electronic keypad lock. "That was Mrs. Blackwood's private studio," came Mrs. Winters' voice, causing Skylar to jump. "No one enters, Mr. Blackwood's orders." "I wasn't. Of course you weren't," the housekeeper cut in, not unkindly. "Curiosity is natural. But some doors in this house are better left closed, Miss Thorne." Later that afternoon, while helping Willow with homework in the library, Skylar noticed a framed photograph partially hidden behind newer family pictures. She carefully lifted it. A younger, smiling Declan stood beside a strikingly beautiful woman with Willow's delicate features. "That's my mommy," Willow said quietly, appearing at Skylar's elbow. "She was beautiful," Skylar replied, studying the image. Unlike the stiff, formal portraits prominently displayed throughout the house, this photograph captured genuine happiness. Isolde Blackwood's eyes sparkled with life. Aunt Persephone took down most of the pictures. Willow continued, her small fingers tracing her mother's face. "She said they make Daddy sad." Before Skylar could respond, a sharp voice interrupted. "Willow, what are you doing?" Declan stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. Willow shrank back, bumping against Skylar. "I apologize, Mr. Blackwood," Skylar said, stepping protectively in front of the child. "I found the photograph, not Willow." His jaw worked as he crossed the room and took the frame from her hands. For a moment, his fingers brushed against hers, and Skylar was shocked by the jolt of electricity that passed between them. "This isn't appropriate," he said, his voice low. "You're here to care for my daughter, Miss Thorne, not conduct an archaeological dig into my past." "With all due respect, sir," Skylar replied, summoning courage. "Your daughter deserves to remember her mother. Hiding away every trace of Isolde won't help Willow heal." The use of his late wife's name seemed to physically strike him. For a heartbeat, the armor cracked. Vulnerability flashed across his face before the walls slammed back into place. "5 minutes until dinner," he said coldly, turning away. "Don't be late." The dining room was an exercise in awkward silence that evening. Persephone dominated what little conversation emerged, directing barbed comments toward Skylar while maintaining a facade of politeness. "How's the new babysitter working out, Declan?" she asked, cutting her filet mignon with surgical precision. "Better than the last disaster, I hope?" "Miss Thorne is a nanny, not a babysitter," Willow piped up, surprising everyone. "And she knows about stars and medicine." Declan's eyebrows rose slightly. "Indeed? And which interests you more, Miss Thorne, heavenly bodies or human ones?" The question carried an unexpected undercurrent that brought heat to Skylar's cheeks. "Both require careful observation, Mr. Blackwood." Something like amusement flickered in his eyes. "Quite right." Persephone's fork clinked against her plate. "Declan, darling, don't forget the Cunningham Foundation Gala tomorrow night. I've already selected your tuxedo." "I haven't decided if I'm attending," he replied, not looking at her. "You must," Persephone insisted. "The board expects it, and we need their support for the new cancer research wing dedicated to Isolde." At the mention of his wife, Declan's expression hardened again. "Fine. Who will watch Willow?" Skylar asked. "It's not my scheduled evening. I assumed you'd be flexible." Persephone smiled thinly. "Unless you have a hot date?" Before Skylar could respond, Declan cut in. "Adjust Miss Thorne's compensation accordingly, Persephone, and stop antagonizing my staff." After dinner, as Skylar helped Willow prepare for bed, the little girl grew uncharacteristically talkative. "Nobody stands up to Aunt Persephone," she whispered conspiratorially. "Not even Daddy." "Your father seems quite capable of handling himself," Skylar replied, brushing the child's hair. Willow shook her head. "He's different now. After Mommy's accident, he went away for a long time. When he came back, he wasn't the same Daddy. Grief changes people, sweetheart." "It wasn't just grief," Willow said with unsettling clarity. "It was the whispers. People saying mean things about him." Skylar's hand stilled. "What kind of things?" "That Daddy made Mommy's car crash," Willow whispered, eyes wide. "But that's not true. Daddy loved Mommy." A chill ran down Skylar's spine. "Of course it's not true. People say horrible things when they don't understand." Later that night, unable to sleep, Skylar researched Isolde Blackwood's death on her laptop. The society pages were full of innuendo: brake failure on a mountain road, substantial life insurance, a marriage rumored to be failing. No charges were ever filed, but the court of public opinion had been merciless. A soft knock interrupted her reading. Opening her door, she found a rain-soaked Declan Blackwood standing in the hallway, his expression unguarded for once. "She has nightmares," he said without preamble. "Willow, she's asking for you." As they walked silently toward the child's room, Skylar couldn't help but notice how the mask had slipped. This wasn't the intimidating tycoon. This was simply a father worried about his daughter. In that undefended moment, standing together in the darkened hallway outside Willow's room, something shifted between them, fragile and unnamed but undeniably present. Dangerous territory for a nanny who needed this job and a man still haunted by his past. 3 months into her employment at Blackwood Manor, Skylar had established a delicate balance. Willow flourished under her care. The once withdrawn child now chatted excitedly about school projects and joined extracurricular activities. Every small victory with Willow felt monumental, like coaxing a rare flower to bloom in inhospitable soil. Declan remained an enigma, though Skylar noticed subtle changes. He now arrived home earlier, sometimes joining them for evening reading sessions in the library. While his interactions remained formal, the ice in his tone had thawed. One Tuesday evening, Skylar found him watching from the doorway as she helped Willow with a science project, a diorama of the solar system. "Neptune's too close to Uranus," he commented, stepping into the room. "Dad," Willow exclaimed, "we're making a cosmic masterpiece." Skylar knows all about planetary orbits. Does she now? His eyebrow arched as he knelt beside them, examining their work. The scale is impressive. Medical school requires understanding physics, Schuyler explained, acutely aware of his proximity. Everything's connected, celestial bodies and human ones. A hint of a smile touched his lips. You've used that line before, Miss Thorne. Schuyler, she corrected gently. After 3 months, I think we can drop the formalities when it's just us. Their eyes met over Willow's head, and something unspoken passed between them. He nodded slightly. Schuyler, then. The ease of the moment shattered when Persephone swept into the room. Her eyes narrowed at the tableau before her. Declan, Schuyler, and Willow huddled together over the project, looking for all the world like a family. How domestic, she remarked coldly. Declan, we need to discuss the quarterly reports for the foundation. The board is asking questions about certain discrepancies. The warmth vanished from his expression. We'll discuss it in my office. After they departed, Willow sighed dramatically. Aunt Persephone always ruins everything. She's just doing her job, Schuyler replied diplomatically, though privately she agreed. Something about Persephone seemed calculated, her every gesture designed to maintain control over both household and foundation. Later that week, a nor'easter struck Boston with unexpected ferocity. Wind howled through the estate's ancient oaks, and rain lashed against the windows with such force that Schuyler worried the glass might shatter. Thunder boomed overhead, and Willow appeared at Schuyler's door shortly after midnight, trembling. The storm monsters are too loud, she whispered. Schuyler welcomed her with open arms. Let's build a fort to keep them away. They constructed an elaborate shelter from blankets in the sitting room of Schuyler's suite, complete with flashlights and stuffed animal guardians. Eventually, Willow drifted to sleep, her features peaceful for once. A sharp crack of lightning illuminated the room, followed by total darkness as the power failed. Seconds later, a soft knock came at the door. Declan stood in the hallway, his silhouette outlined by the emergency lights. Willow, he asked, concern evident in his voice. She's asleep in our storm fortress, Schuyler whispered, stepping aside to let him enter. Relief washed over his face as he spotted his daughter nestled among pillows and blankets. In the dim glow of battery-powered lights, his customary armor seemed absent. The East Wing always loses power first during storms, he explained, his voice low. The wiring is original to the house. Would you both be more comfortable in the main wing? I think moving her might do more harm than good, Schuyler replied. She just settled. He nodded, then surprised her by sinking into an armchair near the fort. Then I'll stay too, if you don't mind. These storms. He trailed off. Bring back memories, Schuyler ventured, taking the chair opposite him. In the shadows, his expression was unreadable. Isolde died on a night like this. Not here, in Vermont. Mountain Road, heavy rain. His words emerged clipped, controlled. The investigation said brake failure. Mechanical, not tampering. I never believed the rumors, Schuyler said quietly. His eyes locked with hers. You've heard them then? It's hard not to in Boston society. But I prefer to make my own judgments about people. And what judgment have you made about me, Schuyler Thorne? The way he said her full name sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. I think you're a man carrying wounds you don't allow anyone to see. I think you love your daughter fiercely but don't know how to connect with her. And I think... She hesitated. Go on. I think you're lonely, even surrounded by people. Thunder crashed outside, but neither of them flinched. The honesty between them felt as electric as the lightning. Perceptive, he finally murmured. Your turn. My turn. Fair exchange. I've shown you mine. Now show me yours. She smiled slightly at his choice of words. My wounds, you mean? You know about my parents. The facts, not the feelings. Schuyler looked toward the sleeping Willow, then back to Declan. They died in a car accident when I was 12. A drunk driver. I went to live with my grandmother, who sacrificed everything to give me a good education. That explains your drive, he commented. But not why a brilliant medical student spends her days watching Disney movies and making solar system dioramas. Maybe I needed a family as much as Willow needed someone to understand her, Schuyler admitted. The words emerged before she could filter them, hanging in the air between them. Declan leaned forward, his face half illuminated by the flashlight's glow. And have you found it? Family. The question carried weight beyond its simple phrasing. I'm finding something, she answered carefully. They talked through the night as the storm raged, about medical school challenges, his company's innovations in renewable energy, books they'd loved, places they'd traveled. The conversation flowed more easily than Skylar would have imagined possible, revealing a version of Declan Blackwood the public never saw. Thoughtful, occasionally funny, passionate about environmental causes. Dawn broke with pale golden light streaming through the windows as the storm finally passed. Willow stirred from her blanket fortress, blinking in surprise at finding her father asleep in the armchair across from Skylar. "You stayed," she whispered, crawling into his lap. Declan's arms encircled his daughter automatically, even before he fully woke. "Wild horses couldn't have dragged me away," he murmured into her hair. The tableau they created, father and daughter bathed in morning light, made Skylar's heart ache with unexpected longing. She was crossing into dangerous territory, developing feelings for her employer. But watching him with Willow, seeing the man beneath the carefully constructed facade, she knew it might already be too late to guard her heart. As if sensing her thoughts, Declan looked up, his eyes meeting hers over Willow's head. Something shifted in his expression, recognition, possibility, perhaps even fear. Whatever had awakened between them during the storm wouldn't easily be put back to sleep. "Pancakes," Willow declared, breaking the moment. "Storm nights always mean pancakes for breakfast. Family tradition. Family tradition," Declan repeated softly, his gaze still holding Skylar's. Indeed. The Rothschild Foundation Gala transformed Boston's Museum of Fine Arts into a glittering showcase of wealth and influence. From her position near the bar, Skylar observed the city's elite mingling beneath Renaissance masterpieces. She'd come as a last-minute guest of the Blackwoods when the childcare arrangements for Willow fell through, an adjustment that had clearly displeased Persephone. "You clean up nicely," a voice commented beside her. Julian Hawthorne, Declan's chief legal counsel, offered her a flute of champagne. His reputation preceded him, brilliant, ruthless, and one of the few people Declan trusted implicitly. "Thanks," Skylar replied, self-conscious in her borrowed gown. One of Persephone's cast-offs that had required emergency alterations. "You've caused quite a stir in the Blackwood household," Julian observed. "The longest-lasting nanny in years, and suddenly Declan's attending school functions and family dinners." Across the room, Declan stood in conversation with several board members, his expression carefully neutral. Even from a distance, Skylar could read the tension in his shoulders. "Willow's doing the hard work," she deflected. "I'm just supporting her progress." Julian's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Modest too. Interesting." Before she could respond, a woman in an emerald gown approached. "You must be the miracle worker everyone's talking about," she said, assessing Skylar with undisguised curiosity. "Miranda Cunningham. My husband chairs the hospital board." "Skylar Thorne. It's a pleasure. Tell me," Miranda leaned closer, her voice dropping to a stage whisper, "is it difficult working in that house?" After what happened with Isolde, Skylar maintained her composure. "I find it rewarding helping Willow." "Of course, the child," Miranda nodded sympathetically. "Such a tragedy. Those break lines, so suspicious. Though between us, Isolde was planning to leave him. Everyone knew their marriage was failing." Skylar's heart raced. "I'm sorry, but I don't think." "Miranda," Julian interrupted smoothly, "your husband's looking for you." After the woman departed, Julian studied Skylar's face. First rule of Boston society: everyone poisons the well. Don't drink from it. Later that evening, Skylar escaped to a quiet gallery, needing space from the whispers that followed her throughout the event. The rumors about Declan had grown more specific, more troubling. Hiding from the vultures? Declan's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the main hall's chandeliers. "Just admiring the art," she lied. He joined her before a melancholy degas. "What did Miranda Cunningham tell you?" "I saw her pounce." Skylar hesitated, then decided on honesty. "That Isolde was planning to leave you." His jaw tightened. "And you believed her?" "I don't know what to believe," Skylar admitted. "There are so many versions of your story circulating tonight. And which version interests you most?" His voice had grown dangerously soft. "The truth." Their eyes locked in the dim gallery. For a heartbeat, Skylar thought he might actually confide in her. Instead, Persephone appeared in the doorway. "There you are," she called. "Declan, Senator Collins is asking about your green energy initiative." The moment shattered. Declan straightened, mask firmly back in place. We'll continue this conversation another time, Miss Thorne. The following morning, Skylar made a decision. In a small cafe across town, she met with Quentin Reed, a former classmate who'd left medical school for private investigation work. "I need information about Isolde Blackwood's death," she said after they'd exchanged pleasantries. Discreetly, Quentin studied her curiously. "Getting involved with the Blackwoods is dangerous territory." "It's for Willow," Skylar insisted, though a part of her acknowledged other motivations. "She deserves to know her mother's story someday." "And what does Daddy Warbucks think about your investigation?" Skylar looked away. "He doesn't know." "Of course he doesn't." Quentin's expression softened. "I'll look into it, but be careful, Sky. These people play by different rules." When she returned to the mansion that afternoon, Skylar found Persephone waiting in her suite. "Family meeting in the library," she announced, her tone glacial. "Attendance is mandatory." In the library, Declan stood by the fireplace while Willow sat nervously on the sofa. "Tell them your news, dear," Persephone prompted with false warmth. Willow brightened. "I got the lead in the spring play. Skylar helped me practice." "Congratulations," Skylar exclaimed, confused by the formal announcement. "Indeed," Persephone continued. "Which brings us to an interesting development. The school board president's son will be playing opposite Willow. He's invited us, all of us, to their Hampton estate next weekend to rehearse." Skylar caught the undercurrent immediately. Persephone had orchestrated this, creating a situation where Skylar would be sidelined. "Practical experience in high society will benefit Willow," Persephone added, her gaze challenging Skylar. "Don't you agree, Miss Thorne?" Before Skylar could respond, Declan spoke. "Skylar will accompany us. Willow needs consistency." The look Persephone gave Skylar contained undisguised hostility. The battle lines had been drawn. The Hampton estate stretched across 12 manicured acres, its main house a sprawling colonial revival overlooking the Atlantic. For Skylar, the weekend represented both opportunity and danger. A chance to observe the Blackwoods away from their usual environment, but also a deeper dive into waters that might drown her. Saturday morning found her walking along the private beach, the May air still carrying winter's chill. Her phone vibrated with a text from Quentin. "Found something. Call when alone." She glanced back at the house, confirmed no one was watching, and dialed. "The financial records don't add up," Quentin said without preamble. "Persephone has been siphoning money from the Blackwood Foundation for years, small amounts, carefully hidden." "Are you certain?" Skylar's stomach tightened. "Positive. But here's where it gets interesting. I found emails between Isolde and a forensic accountant dated 2 weeks before her death. She suspected something and was building a case. Against Persephone? Looks that way. There's more. The police report noted the brake line was cleanly cut, but they couldn't prove it wasn't road damage. The detective who led the investigation now works private security for Persephone's brother." Skylar felt ill. "So Persephone might have." "I'm not saying that," Quentin interrupted. "But Isolde was planning to present her findings to Declan. If someone wanted to stop that from happening." "Does Declan know any of this?" "No evidence he does. The Foundation audit logs show he hasn't accessed the records Isolde was investigating." A voice behind her made Skylar jump. "Beautiful morning for conspiracies." She whirled to find Persephone standing on the dunes, elegant even in casual wear, her expression unreadable. "Just checking in with a friend," Skylar replied, ending the call. "Of course." Persephone's smile was razor-thin. "Declan's asking for you. Something about Willow's rehearsal." Inside, Skylar found Willow practicing lines with a sullen boy while Declan watched from the sidelines. His face brightened subtly when she entered, a reaction not lost on their hostess, Eleanor Prescott, who observed the interaction with keen interest. "Miss Thorne," Eleanor said, her Boston Brahmin accent pronounced. "I understand you're pursuing medicine while caring for Willow. How industrious." The condescension was unmistakable. Before Skylar could respond, Declan intervened. "Skylar's brilliance is precisely why she's invaluable to us," he stated, his tone brooking no argument. "Willow's academic performance has improved dramatically under her guidance." The unexpected defense warmed Skylar even as it deepened her unease about the secrets she now carried. Later that afternoon, while the others played tennis, Skylar slipped into the guest house office where Persephone had set up a temporary workspace. The risk was enormous, but if Quentin was right, the laptop required a password. Skylar tried several combinations before Isolde's state unlocked the screen. Heart pounding, she quickly located the foundation files Quentin had mentioned. The evidence was damning: systematic transfers disguised as vendor payments, all ultimately routing to offshore accounts controlled by Persephone. A document caught her eye: Isolde's amended will. According to this version, control of her personal fortune passed to Persephone as trustee for Willow, with Declan receiving only a token inheritance. But something seemed wrong about the signature. Skylar photographed several key documents with her phone before carefully restoring everything to its original state. As she prepared to leave, voices approached. She barely managed to slip out the back door before Persephone and Eleanor entered. "He's becoming difficult," Persephone was saying. "That girl has poisoned the well." "Men are simple creatures," Eleanor replied. "Remove the temptation, and he'll revert to form." The fundraiser next month provides the perfect opportunity. That evening, during the formal dinner, Skylar struggled to maintain composure. Each time she met Persephone's gaze, she imagined Isolde's final moments on that rain-slicked mountain road. "You're quiet tonight," Declan murmured as they moved to the drawing room for after-dinner drinks. "Just tired," she lied. His fingers brushed hers as he handed her a glass of wine, the brief contact sending electricity through her. "We should talk later." The promise in those words made her both hopeful and terrified. If she revealed what she knew, everything would change. But into what? When the household finally retired, Skylar paced her guest room, Quentin's revelations and her own discoveries colliding with her growing feelings for Declan. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Declan stood in the hallway, his expression more vulnerable than she'd ever seen. "May I come in?" They stood in silence for a moment after she closed the door, the air between them charged with unspoken words. "What happened in the gallery that night?" he finally said. "You asked for the truth." "I did. Isolde and I were struggling," he admitted. "But not for the reasons people think." She discovered discrepancies in the foundation finances. "We argued about confronting Persephone." Skylar's breath caught. "You knew?" "I suspected, but I trusted Isolde's judgment. She wanted definitive proof before making accusations." Pain crossed his features. "The night she died, she called to say she'd found something concrete. She was driving home to show me." The pieces clicked into place. "And then the accident happened." "Yes." His voice grew hollow. "The investigation ruled it mechanical failure. I've spent 5 years wondering if I missed something." She faced an impossible choice: reveal what she knew and risk everything, or stay silent and become complicit. The documents on her phone felt like they were burning through her pocket. "Declan," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "there's something I need to show you. This changes everything," Declan whispered, staring at the evidence on Skylar's phone. His face had gone ashen as he scrolled through the financial records and the altered will with Isolde's questionable signature. "Persephone didn't just steal, she may have killed my wife." "We need to be careful," Skylar cautioned. "We don't have definitive proof of her involvement in Isolde's death, but we have enough to go to the authorities about the embezzlement." His eyes met hers, filled with a volatile mix of gratitude and rage. "How did you get these?" Skylar hesitated. "I hired someone, a private investigator. And today, I found the documents on Persephone's laptop." Declan's expression darkened. "You went behind my back?" "I needed to know the truth. For Willow. For you." She reached for his hand. "I couldn't stand watching you carry this burden of suspicion." For a moment, he seemed poised between anger and understanding. Then his shoulders sagged. "You took an enormous risk. If Persephone had caught you." "Some risks are worth taking," Skylar said softly. The air between them shifted as his eyes locked with hers. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned forward until their foreheads touched. "Skylar," he breathed, her name a question and answer both. When his lips met hers, the kiss held 5 years of dormant emotion, tentative at first, then urgent with need. Skylar felt herself responding with equal intensity, her hands finding his shoulders as he pulled her closer. "I've wanted this," he murmured against her mouth, "even when I told myself I shouldn't." "Me too," she admitted. They broke apart at the sound of footsteps in the hallway, reality crashing back. Declan quickly composed himself. "We'll deal with this tomorrow, after we return to Boston. I'll contact my attorneys. Be careful around Persephone until then," Skylar warned. "She suspects something. I overheard her talking with Eleanor." Declan nodded grimly. Get some rest. We leave first thing in the morning. Sleep proved impossible. Skylar lay awake, replaying the kiss, worrying about Persephone's next move, wondering how their relationship had transformed so completely in one evening. By morning, rain pelted the estate, matching the grim mood as the Blackwoods prepared for departure. Persephone appeared particularly agitated, checking her phone constantly. Change of plans, she announced as they gathered in the foyer. Eleanor's hosting an impromptu brunch for the theater parents. Attendance is mandatory for networking purposes. We need to get back, Declan countered. The others are already arriving, Persephone insisted. It would be a grave insult to leave now. Reluctantly, they found themselves in Eleanor's sunroom, surrounded by Boston's elite. Skylar felt distinctly out of place among their practiced social graces and designer attire. Miss Thorne, Eleanor called loudly, drawing attention. We were just discussing your remarkable position in the Blackwood household. So unusual for medical students to play nanny, isn't it? Before Skylar could respond, a new voice joined the conversation. Skylar? Skylar Thorne. She turned to find Chase Reynolds, her ex-boyfriend from college, striding toward her with calculated surprise. His presence couldn't be coincidental. Chase, she acknowledged coolly. I didn't expect to see you here. He smiled with practiced charm. Eleanor's my cousin. When she mentioned a Skylar Thorne was staying with the Blackwoods, I had to see if it was my Skylar. I was never yours, she countered, aware of Declan watching intently from across the room. Chase laughed, moving uncomfortably close. That's not how I remember our sophomore year. He placed his hand on her arm in false familiarity. Declan approached, his expression thunderous. Everything all right here? Just catching up with an old flame? Chase replied glibly. Skylar and I have quite the history. Persephone materialized beside them, her timing impeccable. How fascinating. Do share, Mr. Reynolds. What followed was a masterclass in character assassination as Chase recounted a deliberately twisted version of their brief relationship, painting Skylar as calculating and opportunistic. Persephone prompted him with leading questions while the room fell silent, all eyes on the unfolding drama. She always had a thing for successful older men. Chase concluded with a knowing smirk. Professors, teaching assistants, anyone who could advance her career. Skylar felt physically ill. That's not true. No. Chase raised an eyebrow. What about Professor Harmon? The married one. Gasps rippled through the gathered socialites. Skylar looked desperately toward Declan, whose face had transformed into an impenetrable mask. Declan, she pleaded. This is orchestrated. Persephone set this up because she knows we found evidence. Evidence? Persephone interjected sharply. Of what exactly? I think we're done here, Declan said, his voice icily formal. Miss Thorne, we'll discuss your continued employment privately. In that moment, Skylar realized the trap had sprung perfectly. Her credibility destroyed, her relationship with Declan fractured, and Persephone's secrets still protected by doubt. The drive back to Boston unfolded in excruciating silence. Willow sensed the tension, her small face crumpling in confusion. At the mansion, Declan finally spoke. Pack your things, Miss Thorne. Your services are no longer required. You're firing me? After everything. Tears threatened, but Skylar fought them back. Declan, you know Persephone orchestrated this. The evidence on my phone could be fabricated for all I know, he cut in harshly. Given what I've learned about your character. You don't believe that, she whispered. Something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or regret, before hardening once more. Your final paycheck will include 2 months' severance. I expect you gone by morning. As Skylar packed her belongings, Willow appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. You promised you wouldn't leave, she accused. Kneeling to embrace the child, Skylar fought to maintain composure. Sometimes adults make mistakes, sweetheart. But I want you to remember that you are so loved, so special. Daddy's making a mistake, Willow sobbed. You make him happy. You make us a family. Those words followed Skylar as she left Blackwood Manor that night, returning to her tiny apartment across town. There, surrounded by textbooks and the remnants of her simpler life, she finally allowed herself to break down, mourning not just her own heartbreak, but Willow's renewed abandonment and Declan's wounded retreat behind his walls. 2 weeks after her dismissal from Blackwood Manor, Skylar's life had contracted to a painful routine, Medical school classes during the day, sleepless nights spent staring at her ceiling, and constant, gnawing worry for Willow. She tried calling several times, but her number had been blocked. Even Mrs. Winters, who'd slipped her a sympathetic note on her way out, hadn't responded to her messages. "You look like hell," Quentin observed, sliding into the booth across from her at their regular diner. His normally flippant demeanor had been replaced by genuine concern. "Thanks for the update," Skylar replied, pushing her untouched coffee aside. "Any news?" Quentin hesitated before passing a manila folder across the table. "I found the original will, the real one, in a safety deposit box registered to Isolde. The bank finally granted access after I presented the court order." Skylar's hands trembled as she opened the folder. The document inside bore little resemblance to the version Persephone had been using. "This leaves everything to Willow in a trust, with Declan as sole trustee." "Exactly. The version you found on Persephone's laptop was a forgery, a good one, but definitely not executed by Isolde." He leaned forward. "There's more. The forensic accountant Isolde hired before her death? He kept copies of everything. The money trail leads directly to Persephone and her brother, Vincent. And the brake line on Isolde's car? I tracked down the original mechanic who examined the wreck. He was pressured to rule it accidental, but his initial report noted clean cuts consistent with tampering." Quentin's expression darkened. Someone with access to Isolde's car deliberately severed those lines. The implications hit Skylar like a physical blow. "We need to get this information to Declan immediately. That's the problem. I tried contacting him directly, but Persephone has him completely insulated. All calls get routed through her office." Quentin lowered his voice. "And there's something else. She's accelerated the timeline for transferring Foundation assets. According to my source at their bank, she's planning to move nearly everything offshore after the annual gala this Saturday. When Declan will be distracted by hosting hundreds of guests," Skylar realized. "Exactly. Perfect timing for the final stage of her plan." Skylar's mind raced. "The gala is our only chance to reach him. I need to get inside. Security will be tight. Persephone must have your photo on every blacklist in Boston by now. Then we need help from someone already on the guest list." Skylar pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd hoped never to use again. Julian Hawthorne answered on the third ring. "Miss Thorne, I wondered when you'd call. I need 5 minutes with Declan. Privately." A pause. "Interesting. And why would I facilitate that?" "Because I have proof that Persephone murdered Isolde and has been systematically looting the Foundation. Unless you're complicit, you'll want to protect your client." Another, longer pause. "The North Service entrance. 8 o'clock. I'll leave a staff pass." The night of the gala arrived with unusual clarity for late spring, stars visible over Boston Harbor, the air perfumed with early blooming roses. The Blackwood estate glowed with elegant lighting, limousines lining the circular drive as society's elite arrived in their finery. Skylar, dressed in borrowed catering attire, her hair tucked beneath a cap, slipped through the service entrance with the pass Julian had provided. The kitchen buzzed with activity, allowing her to blend in as she navigated the back corridors she knew so well. She spotted Willow first, descending the grand staircase in a blue velvet dress that matched her eyes. The child looked hollow-eyed and subdued, scanning the crowd as if searching for someone. When their gazes met across the room, Willow's face transformed with joy. Before the girl could call out, Skylar pressed a finger to her lips and motioned toward a side hallway. Moments later, they embraced in Declan's study, Willow's small arms clinging desperately. "I knew you'd come back," Willow whispered fiercely. "Daddy's been so sad. He doesn't laugh anymore." "Willow, listen carefully. I need to talk to your father right away. It's very important. Do you know where he is?" "In the library with Aunt Persephone and some board members." Willow's expression darkened. "She never leaves him alone now. Can you help me get him here?" "Tell him." Skylar paused, thinking quickly. "Tell him Stella the rabbit is lost in his study and you need help finding her." Willow nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of the mission. "I'll bring him." As the child slipped away, Skylar arranged the evidence on Declan's desk. The original will, the forensic accountant's files, the mechanic's suppressed report, and the banking records showing imminent transfers. 10 minutes later, the study door opened. Declan entered alone, closing it behind him. He looked haggard, the past weeks etched into new lines on his face. "Skylar," he breathed. her name somewhere between question and revelation. Don't speak. Just look. She gestured to the documents. Everything you need to know about your wife's death and what Persephone's been doing. She forged the will, she's been stealing for years, and there's evidence she tampered with Isolde's brakes. He moved to the desk, scanning the papers with increasing alarm. When he looked up, his eyes held a storm of emotions, grief, rage, and something else Skylar couldn't quite name. Why did you come back? After what I did, how I treated you. Because Willow needs you, and you need the truth. She hesitated. I couldn't let Persephone destroy what Isolde built, what you've protected for Willow's future. Before he could respond, the door burst open. Persephone stood in the threshold, her designer gown a slash of crimson against the dark paneling. Behind her loomed her brother Vincent, his expression murderous. How touching, Persephone hissed. The help returns for one last desperate play. Declan's voice cut like steel. It's over, Persephone. I've seen the evidence. Evidence? She laughed, the sound brittle. Fabricated by a disgraced employee with a vendetta. Really, Declan, I expected better judgment from you. The original will is quite real, as are the forensic records showing you systematically drained the foundation. Declan moved protectively closer to Skylar. And the mechanics report on Isolde's brake lines is particularly damning. Something dangerous flashed in Persephone's eyes. Isolde was going to ruin everything. She didn't understand what it took to maintain our position. The sacrifices required. The confession hung in the air, stunning in its casual delivery. You killed my wife, Declan said, each word weighted with horrified realization. Vincent stepped forward, reaching inside his jacket. This conversation is over. You'll sign the transfer authorizations now, or the study door flew open again as Julian entered with 2 police officers. Or what, Vincent? You'll add more murders to your resume. What followed unfolded with surreal efficiency. Persephone and Vincent were taken into custody, their protests fading down the hallway as the officers led them away. The gala continued in the main house, the guests blissfully unaware of the drama playing out beyond the library doors. In the sudden quiet of the study, Skylar and Declan faced each other. 5 years of lies finally cleared away between them. I should have trusted you, he said simply. When you showed me the evidence in the Hamptons, I believed you. But after what happened at Eleanor's, I let my old insecurities take over. The fear that anyone who got close to me only wanted what I could provide. And now, Skylar asked softly. Declan's answer was interrupted by Willow bursting into the room, Mrs. Winters following close behind. Did it work? Did you show Daddy the truth? The child demanded. Skylar smiled through gathering tears. It worked, sweetheart. Mrs. Winters surveyed the scene with knowing eyes. Perhaps Miss Thorne would like her old room prepared? The East Wing suite, I believe. Declan looked to Skylar, the question clear in his eyes. When she nodded, his face transformed with a smile she'd glimpsed only in photographs of his younger self. Not the East Wing, he said, his gaze never leaving Skylar's. The family wing this time, if she'll have us. Us, Willow echoed, slipping her small hand into Skylar's. We're better together. I knew you'd come home. Home. The word echoed in Skylar's heart as she looked between father and daughter, her unexpected, imperfect, miraculous family found in the wreckage of tragedy and deception. I never really left, she whispered, reaching for them both. 6 months after Persephone's arrest, Blackwood Manor had undergone a transformation that went beyond the physical renovations. The once somber halls now resonated with laughter. The formal rooms had been redecorated in warmer tones, and Isolde's locked studio had been converted into a memorial art gallery displaying her photography, a talent Willow had apparently inherited. A light spring rain pattered against the windows as Skylar stood in the master suite, contemplating her reflection in the full-length mirror. The elegant ivory gown was simpler than what Boston society would expect, but it perfectly reflected her personal style. Understated yet undeniably beautiful. Nervous? Mrs. Winters asked, adjusting the small cluster of wildflowers in Skylar's hair. Not about marrying him, Skylar replied with a smile. Just about having 300 guests watching. The housekeeper's eyes softened. In all my years with this family, I never thought I'd see either of them truly happy again. You changed everything, my dear. A knock at the door preceded Willow's entrance. The 9-year-old was radiant in her junior bridesmaid dress, a miniature version of Skylar's gown. Dad's pacing in the library, she reported with a grin. Julian says he's worn a path in the carpet. Skylar laughed. Cold feet. No way. Willow's certainty was absolute. He's just impatient. He told Julian that he's been waiting his whole life for today without even knowing it. The sentiment brought unexpected tears to Skylar's eyes. The journey to this day had been neither simple nor straightforward. The legal aftermath of Persephone's crimes had consumed months, untangling the financial web, restoring the foundation's integrity, and ensuring both she and Vincent faced justice for Isolde's murder. Throughout it all, Declan had shown remarkable resilience. Where once he might have retreated behind walls of isolation, he had instead opened himself completely to both grief and healing. Together, they had created a new family narrative, one that honored Isolde's memory while embracing their future. "It's time," Mrs. Winters announced, checking her watch. The small wedding party made their way through the house to the rear gardens, where a clear tent had been erected to shield guests from the gentle rain. As Skylar paused at the entrance, the string quartet began playing the processional she and Declan had selected together. At the opposite end of the aisle, Declan turned to watch her approach. The naked emotion on his face, wonder, joy, and profound love, stole her breath. Gone was the guarded businessman, replaced by simply a man witnessing a miracle. Willow preceded Skylar down the aisle, beaming at the assembled guests, a mixture of Boston elite, hospital colleagues, and the household staff who had become family. Julian stood beside Declan as best man, winking at Skylar as she approached. When she reached Declan, he took her hands, his fingers trembling slightly against hers. "You came back to us," he whispered, the words meant only for her. "Always," she promised. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion. They had written their own vows, simple declarations that acknowledged their unconventional path and the strength they'd found together. When Declan spoke of second chances and redemption, there wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. "By the power vested in me," the judge concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Their kiss was both gentle and fierce, a promise and a celebration. Applause erupted, but Skylar barely registered it, lost in the moment and the man before her. The reception unfolded across the estate's gardens and downstairs rooms, a far cry from the stiff formal events previously associated with the Blackwood name. Declan had insisted on creating a celebration that felt like home, comfortable, joyful, and authentic. As evening approached, Skylar found herself momentarily alone on the terrace, watching guests dance under twinkling lights in the garden below. The rain had cleared, leaving behind a freshly washed world and the scent of spring. "Mrs. Blackwood," Declan's voice came from behind her, still testing the sound of her new name. "Abandoning your own reception?" She turned to face him, her heart skipping at the sight of his relaxed smile. Just taking a moment to absorb it all. He joined her at the railing, slipping an arm around her waist. "Having second thoughts about marrying a man with such complicated baggage?" "Never." She leaned into him. "Though I am wondering how I'll balance being a doctor and a wife and a mother." "You'll be magnificent at all three," he said with absolute conviction. "Just as you've been magnificent at healing this family." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the celebration below. Willow had gathered a group of children for an impromptu game of tag between the rose bushes, her laughter floating up to them. "I never thought I'd have this again," Declan admitted quietly. "After Isolde died, I convinced myself that love was something I'd experienced once and lost forever. And now?" Skylar asked, turning in his arms to face him. His hands framed her face with reverent care. "Now I know that the heart is resilient beyond imagination. That even after the darkest night, dawn eventually comes." The kiss they shared then was different from any before, unhurried, profound, and filled with the certainty of many tomorrows. "Dr. Skylar Blackwood," he murmured against her lips. "I love the sound of that." She smiled. "I'm not quite Dr. Blackwood yet. Still have residency to complete." "Details," he waved dismissively, making her laugh. "However long it takes, whatever you need. We'll build this life together, one day at a time." From below, Willow called up to them. "Dad, Skylar, they're bringing out the cake." "Duty calls," Skylar said with a grin. Declan took her hand, his thumb brushing over her new wedding band. "Our daughter awaits. Shall we?" As they rejoined the celebration, Skylar felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. The path that had brought her to Blackwood Manor had been unexpected and often difficult. But standing here now, surrounded by love that had been hard-won through honesty, courage, and forgiveness, she wouldn't change a single step of the journey. In the end, she had found not just a family to call her own, but the kind of love stories rarely captured even in fiction. Deep, transformative, and built to weather any storm. For an orphan girl who once thought family was forever beyond her reach, it was nothing short of miraculous. "Ready?" Declan asked, as they prepared to cut the cake before their cheering guests. Skylar looked from him to Willow, both watching her with identical expressions of adoration, and knew with absolute certainty that she had finally, truly come home. "Ready for everything," she answered, and stepped forward into their future together. 5 years later, the familiar sound of bare feet pattering down the hallway made Skylar smile as she arranged the last of the fresh-cut flowers in the dining room. A moment later, 3-year-old Declan Jr., DJ to the family, burst through the doorway, his dark curls bouncing with each energetic step. "Mommy, is Auntie Rose here yet?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her legs. "Not yet, sweetheart," Skylar replied, lifting him into her arms. "But she should be arriving any minute with Uncle Quentin and your cousin Lily." Motherhood had come to Skylar both gradually and suddenly. Gradually in her relationship with Willow, now a confident 14-year-old with her mother's artistic talent and her father's analytical mind, and suddenly with DJ's birth 3 years ago. The tiny tornado had his father's eyes and his mother's determination, a combination that both delighted and exhausted his parents. "Need any help?" Declan appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened after a day at the office. At 44, silver now dominated his temples, giving him a distinguished appearance that still made Skylar's heart skip. "Just the finishing touches," she answered, accepting his kiss. "How was the foundation meeting?" "Productive. The new children's wing at Boston Memorial is on track for completion next month." Pride colored his voice. The Isolde Blackwood Pediatric Center will serve thousands of kids who wouldn't otherwise have access to specialized care. Transforming Isolde's legacy had been their shared mission since Persephone's conviction. The Blackwood Foundation now stood as one of the Northeast's premier charitable organizations, with Declan and Skylar co-chairing the board. "And how was your day, Dr. Blackwood?" Declan asked, taking DJ from her arms. 2 years into her pediatric practice, Skylar still felt a thrill whenever she heard her professional title. "Busy clinic day, but good. One of my long-term patients finally reached remission." The doorbell chimed, sending DJ squirming from his father's grasp. "They're here." The reunion that followed was joyful chaos. Rose, Skylar's medical school friend who had married Quentin 3 years ago, carried their 1-year-old daughter Lily. Behind them came Julian and his husband Marcus, arms laden with gifts for Willow's upcoming birthday celebration. Mrs. Winters, who had steadfastly refused retirement despite Declan's generous offers, directed staff in serving drinks and appetizers while the family gathered in the garden room. Once a formal, rarely used space, now the heart of the home with comfortable furniture and walls displaying Willow's increasingly impressive photographs alongside Isolde's work. To family, Declan proposed a toast once everyone had settled. "Both those we're born to and those we choose." Clinking glasses punctuated the sentiment as Skylar surveyed the gathering with quiet wonder. From tragedy had emerged this beautiful tapestry of connections. Quentin, once hired to uncover Persephone's crimes, now godfather to DJ. Julian, whose crucial intervention had helped bring justice, now practically an uncle to both children. And Rose, who had supported Skylar through the tumultuous early days, now raising her daughter alongside Skylar's children. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the children were asleep, Skylar found Declan in his study, reviewing plans for the pediatric center. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, perching on the arm of his chair. He pulled her onto his lap, arms encircling her waist. "Just reflecting on how different everything is now. 5 years ago, this house was a mausoleum to grief and secrets. And now it's alive again." His smile softened the serious lines of his face. "Because of you." Skylar shook her head. "Because we all healed together. You, me, Willow, we found our way through the darkness." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of their home, the distant hum of the security system, the occasional creak of century-old wooden beams, the soft whisper of wind through the garden trees. "I have something to tell you," Skylar said finally, her heart quickening. "I wasn't going to say anything until I was certain, but—" Declan's eyes widened in understanding before she could finish. "Are you?" She nodded, a smile blooming across her face. "About 8 weeks along. I confirmed it yesterday." The joy that transformed his expression was everything she had hoped for. His hand moved reverently to her still flat stomach, as though he could already feel the new life growing there. "Another miracle," he whispered hoarsely. "Are you happy?" she asked, though his radiant face had already answered. Beyond words. He kissed her with tender passion. "Every time I think I couldn't possibly love you more, you prove me wrong." The next morning, they gathered Willow and DJ for a family breakfast to share the news. Willow's reaction was immediate excitement. She had been asking for another sibling since DJ was born, while the toddler seemed primarily concerned with whether the baby would play with his toy trains. "A sister," Willow declared confidently. "We need to balance things out around here." Skylar laughed. "We'll see what nature decides." After breakfast, while Declan took DJ to the park, Skylar and Willow walked through the memorial garden they had planted together in Isolde's honor. Spring had brought the first blooms, delicate blue forget-me-nots that had been Isolde's favorite. "Do you think your mom would have approved?" Willow asked suddenly, her teenage voice occasionally still revealing the vulnerability of the child Skylar had first met. "Of Dad and you, I mean." Skylar considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I think she would have wanted your father to find happiness again, and you to have someone who loves you as much as she did." "I still miss her sometimes," Willow confessed. "But it's different now. Not like a hole anymore. More like a space filled with memories." "That's exactly how grief should evolve," Skylar said softly. "The love remains, even when the pain subsides." They continued their walk in companionable silence until they reached the small stone bench installed beneath a flowering dogwood tree. Carved into its surface was a simple inscription: "Isolde Blackwood, beloved mother, wife, and artist, her light lives on." "Sometimes I come here when I have big decisions to make," Willow said. "I tell her about them, and somehow it helps me figure things out." "That's beautiful, Willow. I told her about you first, you know, before you and Dad even realized how you felt about each other." Willow's smile held the wisdom of someone who had experienced both profound loss and profound love. "I think she sent you to us." The sentiment brought unexpected tears to Skylar's eyes. Even after 5 years, Willow still occasionally surprised her with these moments of extraordinary perception. As they made their way back to the house, Skylar reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from the orphan girl determined to build a life on her own, to the young medical student taking a temporary job to pay her bills, to becoming part of a family that had healed her as much as she had healed them. The Blackwood house, once a symbol of tragedy and whispered scandals, now stood as a testament to resilience and second chances. Within its walls, a family had been reborn from the ashes of deception and grief. That evening, watching Declan read a bedtime story to DJ while Willow practiced her photography in the garden, Skylar placed a protective hand over her stomach, imagining the new life growing inside her. The baby would be born into a home filled with love, not the perfect, untested love of fairy tales, but the deeper, more resilient love that comes from weathering storms together. As Declan joined her on the terrace, slipping his arm around her shoulders, Skylar leaned into his embrace. The path ahead would undoubtedly hold new challenges, but they would face them together, no longer the innocent virgin or the wounded widower from their first meeting, but partners who had earned their happiness through courage, honesty, and unwavering faith in each other. "Look," Declan murmured, pointing to the night sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Orion's belt." 3 perfect stars in a row, Skylar echoed, remembering her first conversation with Willow. "Soon to be 4, he added, his hand joining hers over their unborn child. In that perfect moment, under the vast canopy of stars, Skylar Blackwood knew that some love stories, the real ones, built on truth and tested by fire, truly did end with happily ever after.